This ServiceLedger video is going to talk about unit of measure and using unit of measure inside of ServiceLedger. Unit of measure is going to allow you to sit there and define the unit of measures that you sell and purchase for any particular item. One of the best examples I can give is a case of Coke. If you buy a case of Coke, it has 24 cans. I may buy a case of Coke, I may sell it by the can. So when I sell it, I want to sell it as a can. When I purchase it, I may want to purchase it by a case. And I want to make sure that those calculations calculate properly to update my inventory with what I have. Additionally, in addition to a case of Coke, you may have a 12-pack, you may have a 6-pack, then you can go all the way down to like a 2-pack or a 3-pack or something like that. So you kind of get the idea. It's just basically allowing you to set up different levels of measurements for the same item. So what we're going to do here is we're going to just set up first the unit of measure so that you understand how you want to go in and break down the unit of measure for these items. So inside of ServiceLedger, on my unit of measure, you're going to see that I have a can. And basically, a can is a unit of 1. That's the base quantity. That's the minimum quantity it can be. All right? But additionally, you're going to see me have a case, and that case has 24 cans. So when I use this unit of measurement, a case is going to equal 24 of whatever my base unit of measure is. And we'll talk more about that in just a second. So let's go ahead and add another one, and I'm going to add a 12-pack. So let's do a 12-pack. And a 12-pack is going to have 12 cans. So I'm going to go ahead and put in 12 cans here. And then additionally, we're going to do a 6-pack. And a 6-pack is going to have 6 cans. Okay, so now I've gone in and I've set up my unit of measurements. A case is 24 cans, a 12-pack is 12 cans, a 6-pack is 6 cans. I went ahead and created a 2-pack with 2 cans, and then of course we're going to have the can itself, and that's only going to have a quantity of 1. So a can equals 1. That's going to be my base least common denominator measurement that I'm going to be recording here. All right. Now you can calculate this to different things. I could have a roll of wire will equal 240 feet, or I could say a spool of wire equals 480 feet. You can have different calculations, but the important thing is always understand the base unit of measure, in this case can, and then build up from that with all the other possible unit of measures that you're wanting to calculate. So using this can as a example here makes it a little bit clearer for this demonstration. So we'll just kind of keep on going here and then kind of show you how you'll build up from here. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create an item. Now to keep this simple, I'm just going to do an item and I'm just going to call it cola. So let's just go in, select a part item. We'll call it cola. And at this point, I can go in and I can put my base unit price. Let's say it's $1, and I can put my base cost. That's 50 cents. Now, keep in mind that when I set up my unit of measures, I'm going to set this up to a can. So this is my unit price per can, my unit cost per can that I'm putting into ServiceLedger. So if I run over to my unit of measure, my default unit of measure, that's the default in ServiceLedger. So you can default it to can. I can default it to 6-pack, I can default it to 12-pack, I can default it to case. Basically, all you're saying is when you sell this item or when you purchase this item, what's the default value? What we want to do is we want to keep it really simple, so we're going to keep this down to the can. So I'm going to say that my default unit of measure is going to be a can, and then my base unit of measure, again, everything is going to be based upon what unit of measure. Well, my base is going to be a can. So kind of look at it as, again, the least common denominator here. So at this point, I'm not even going to use each, so I'm just going to go to remove that. And I'm just going to start off with a can, which will be a quantity of 1 with my price and my cost. Now I'm going to start building up from here. So let's say I want to do a 2-pack. So I go in and I'm going to add a unit of measure for my 2-pack here. And that's going to be 2 cans, but my price may be different. So if I sell a 2-pack, maybe it's going to be $1.95. Maybe they save a nickel here, and my cost is going to be 95 cents. So I'm going to go in on my cost and put 95 cents on that. So now if I buy a 2-pack, ServiceLedger is automatically going to update my cost to 95 cents for that 2-pack, which is going to break it down. And then if I work my way up a little bit more, so let's go up to a 6-pack, it's going to be 6. And instead of 6, maybe my price to the customer is going to be $5, and my cost to myself, let's say it's going to be $2.75. We'll go up to a 12-pack. Now it's 12 cans. Maybe my cost on a 12-pack is $9.80, or to my customer, and my cost to myself, let's say it's $4.50. And then we'll add one more here, which will be the case. So it's 24 cans. My cost to my customer, maybe it's going to be $18. My cost to myself, let's say it's $8. All right. So the idea here is if I buy by the can, my cost probably will be a little bit more expensive. But if I start buying in bulk, so 2-pack, 6-pack, 12-pack case, I might start getting a lower cost per item. In this case, that item is per can. All right. So ServiceLedger is going to handle all these calculations for you automatically behind the scenes. But basically, once you have all this set up in ServiceLedger, and I have my COLA with my default price, so my default unit measure is can, and that's basically saying that these prices right here are basically your can prices, because that's my default unit of measure. And then I have all these other pricing costs if they buy in the 2-pack, 6-pack, 12-pack, or in the case. So let's see how this applies in ServiceLedger. First of all, let's look at it from a purchasing perspective. Let's say you're on a purchase order, and you're wanting to purchase this, but instead of purchasing by the can, when I go in and buy my COLA, I'm going to be purchasing it by the case. So I don't want to update vendor price here. So in this case, I want to buy 5 cases. ServiceLedger is going to automatically know that 5 cases equates to 120 cans. It's also going to put my price in there based upon what I put in there. So if I go in and I save and close this, now I've been updated with my cost and everything for that particular item. So this particular item, when I buy it this way, it's going to cost me 33 cents per can. That's basically the average cost. All right. Now, if I go in and I sell it, I'm going to have the option when I sell it to a customer, and we'll do a few of these so you can kind of see the breakdown, where I can sell it to my customer by the can, and I set up a price of $1 per can. All right. But I can additionally sell it to my customer by a 2-pack. So if I do one 2-pack, for example, now it's going to break down the price to what I set up for that 2-pack, which, as you remember, was $1.80. Okay, so it's going to be my $1.95. So it's now going to be my $1.95. Or I can sell it to my customer as a 12-pack, and we set that price up to $9.80, and it's going to basically relieve from inventory a total of 12. All right, even though you're only dealing with the unit of measurement of a 12-pack, ServiceLedger knows that a 12-pack equates to 12 cans, so it's 12 cans that's being removed from inventory. All right, so you have the ability in ServiceLedger of actually defining different unit measurements for items that you might buy in bulk but sell them individually, or you might sell them in a segment below what you buy them in bulk. Very popular ways that I've seen unit measurements being used. Some people may buy a box of rods, for example, and inside that box is going to be 25 rods. So they buy a box of rods, but when they receive that, that's 25 individual rods that they have to sell. So that's another example of a unit of measurement that you could set up, where I could go into ServiceLedger under unit of measurements, and I could set up a rod, for example, and I could set it up with the base quantity of 1. And then I could set up a box of rods, and I could say that that has a unit of measurement of 25. And then I can go in and I can create an item called a rod. And then I can say that each rod is going to be $10. The cost on that is $8. That's just individual price. However, when you set up your unit of measurement, I can say that we're going to set that unit of measurement up. Its default value is a rod. So every time I sell or purchase that in ServiceLedger, it's going to default to rod, but I can go up to a box if I want to. The base unit of measure is going to be a rod. In most cases, the default unit of measure should always be the same. However, what you may do is you may have something like this. My default unit of measurement may be a box of rods. So I can go up and sell and purchase that always in a box, but I want the base of unit to be a rod. So this would be okay. What would not be okay is if you did it in reverse. ServiceLedger would not know what you're trying to do. If you try to set it up this way, basically what you're saying is the base unit of measurement is a box of rods, but your default is a rod, and the default is going to be broken down further than your base. So always think about your base being the lowest common denominator. So this right here, if you try to save it, it's going to get tripped up. It's going to tell you there's an error. So what you basically want is your default unit of measurement to always be the same as your base unit of measurement. And then at this point, I can just go in and I can say one rod here will equal this, and then one box of rods will equal my 25. Okay, and then the same principle would apply, that I can buy or sell as a box, but I can buy and sell also as a rod. All right, so pretty self-explanatory, pretty straightforward. In most cases where customers are going to get a little tripped up is where they do their logic incorrect. So it's one of those features that I typically tell customers before you start going in and creating your unit of measurements, always kind of sit down maybe with a pen and paper and think of the base unit of measurements and then work your way up. So, you know, in the case of the cola, for example, my base was the can, and then I can build up to all the other increments and make sure that each of those increments has the defined quantity. So again, can is 1 can, 6-pack is going to be 6 cans, so I want to make sure I get those 6s in there. And then a 12-pack would be 12 cans. I want to make sure that those 12 get in there. And the same thing with the case. Make sure that case is corresponding to 24. Typically where customers are going to get messed up here is on the case. It might be 24, but they might put 23 or something like that, and they're getting measurements that are a little out of whack. And so while this is still good, and ServiceLedger is not going to complain about it because it doesn't really know what the unit of measurement is, from an inventory perspective, you're going to have a case of cola coming in, and ServiceLedger is going to only update 23 when in reality you have 24. So that's really the part that you want to pay attention to, is make sure that the quantity here is always going to match the number of the base unit of measurement, in this case the number of cans that's coming in. Now, as always, if you have any questions on this, you can email questions@serviceledger.com, and we'll be more than happy to assist you with that.